overlaid your PowerPoint, so we're going to see if we can do this all together before he leaves in 2 minutes.
We're just going to say share screen.
Okay.
Start. So this is sharing.
Okay.
This is the video coming back. So she should be able to see the screen, I would think.
Can you see the PowerPoint screen? Kind of. So let me ask, if I want to switch back and forth between, like if she's just talking and I want to make her larger, how do I do that?
I think you can double click.
Oh, okay, good. How'd you do that?
I double clicked on it, on her picture.
Double clicked on her picture. And then if I want to go back to the so this is how I'm going to start, and let's just say after a while she's done with these points, and I want to bring her. How do I bring her up to full screen?
Let's say stop sharing.
And now I want to go back.
You'd have to share screens again. Hit the
plus
button,
sign, share screens,
start.
Okay.
It seems like it's a little bit. There might be an easier way to do it, but that's what I figured out.
Okay.
I don't know a whole lot about it.
Okay. Well, so we're in. So all I have to do to start recording her is hit that right there. Okay, Renee, I'm going to give you a short intro. I think we are recording. We should be good. So our guest speaker tonight is Renee Ruiz, and she is going to speak about community building and coalition building. I'll let Renee do her own introduction. Take it away, Renee.
Hello, everybody. My name is Renee Ruiz, and I am going to talk with you tonight about, just as Dr. Turner said, community building, community organizing, and putting together a citizen lobby. Advance. Down some screen here. A little bit about me and why I'm an expert in my own story. I have had a long career as a community and labor organizer, and I've done extensive work in the political arena, from candidate campaigns to ballot initiatives. I have built, paid, and citizen lobbies in Kansas, Missouri, Arizona, Florida, Nevada, and now Washington State. Currently, I am the organizing director and membership engagement director for United Food and Commercial Workers Local 367 out of Tacoma, Washington. Okay, advanced slide. Okay, so some things that we're going to learn tonight through this presentation. We're going to learn that community organizing and lobbying go hand in hand. We're going to learn about messaging and the vehicles to move our message. Paid lobby versus citizens lobby and what the differences are. Organizing and lobbying are not scary and should be used often. Advance the slide. New terms and phrases that you're going to learn tonight. Grassroots versus grass tops. Expert in my own story. Time is fixed and finite. Circles of influence. Elevator speech and guerrilla lobbying. Advance. Okay. As a social worker, why is community organizing and lobbying something I need to learn? It's all about advocacy. At some point in your career, and maybe throughout the scope of your career, you will be an advocate for people. You will also be in a position to become somewhat of a trainer and a teacher for folks to become self-advocates and teach them how to reclaim their power. Advance. Okay, first, what is community organizing? Community organizing is a process where people who live in close proximity to each other come into an organization that acts in their shared self-interest. And to expand on that a little bit, it's not just folks who live in a neighborhood. It's folks who work in a similar organizations or with similar clients. Those are the folks who form our communities. Advance. What is lobbying? It's the act of attempting to influence decisions made by officials in government. And we kind of throw lobbying around a lot because we lobby not only government officials, but we also, at times, we might lobby the director, we might lobby the instructor, we might lobby our partners and significant others for different things. So we throw the term lobbying around a lot, but for our purposes tonight, lobbying is specifically about a government entity. So the basics, community organizing. So advance, what is my cause or issue? So those of us in this room, well, we're not in the same room, but those of you in that room and me sitting here, one of the reasons that we chose the field that we are in or studying to be in is we want to save the world. We want to save every animal that comes in contact with us or every person that comes in contact with us. We are definitely folks who like causes. When we are thinking about particularly community organizing and or lobbying, we have to understand we can't save the world all at once. So you have to be precise when you're defining what your cause or issue is going to be. You have to narrow the scope of the issues and causes you're going to conquer. So one of the first things you do is you start to plan. Who do I need support from in the community to get my issue in the forefront? So in your first stages, you want to define who your universe or audience is going to be. Am I going to be talking to clients, other professionals in the field, neighbors that live in my community, neighbors that are close to my office, anything like that. And sometimes you're going to look at natural and not so natural allies, depending on your cause. If you are looking at a neighborhood cause, sometimes you might look at business owners that may not be on your same list for other causes you might take up, like if you're going after, I don't know, minimum wage or something like that. So your list of allies changes. And that's something significant to remember when you are thinking through community organizing and how to get your cause or issue in the forefront.
Renee?
Yes.
Are you familiar with the movie Pride?
Pride?
Pride, the movie Pride?
No.
You should add that to your list because that right there in that movie, they talk about allies changing. And this group is watching that movie. And so, yeah, you should look at that because I think it really highlights how the point that you just made, and that's allies change. So,
absolutely. I will definitely put it on my list. Okay, so going back, advance the slide. We're at grassroots versus grass tops. Okay, so when we are putting together our list of allies and organizations that are going to come and help us on our issues and causes, we first want to kind of break them into two types. Our grass tops, they're generally heads of something. They're quote unquote important people in the community, folks who have a following of their own. Grassroots tends to be individuals. And just FYI, usually working with grassroots takes more work and a longer amount of time. But once you have created your grassroots network, it is yours and yours alone. And it is significantly effective in moving your causes and issues. Okay, advance the slide. Now, I know we're going through this really, really quickly, so towards the end, you can ask all the questions you'd like. We're going to talk about message. Message. It is important. Advance the slide. What is my message? The message is how you communicate your cause or issue. May or not be a catchphrase. If you have the money to hire a big advertising firm, they might come up with some catchy little slogan for you, but your message is much more in-depth than that. The important thing is to stay on message. Never stray. When you are on one campaign, on one cause or issue, It is not effective to, once you've developed your message and how you're going to present it, to change it in midstream. It confuses your allies and it confuses the folks that you're trying to get the message to. And so when I say never stray, the team that sets the message and stays on message is the one that wins. So in other words, you can have an opponent. There's going to be opposition to your cause or your issue. You want to set the message first and let them play follow the leader. They're going to have to run after your message to counter it, right? But your message, making it solid and making it far-reaching, means that you are going to be able to reach the final stage and not have strayed or moved, which is significant, particularly in lobbying. Okay. So I've got my issue, I've got my audience, I've got my message. Now what? Advance. Now we're going to actually organize the community. So the first thing you want to do when you're organizing your community around your issue is you want to know your turf. Jumping into the mix without research and knowing the terrain will cost you time, energy, and credibility. So with that being said, if, for example, we were working on school breakfast programs, and I just got my head was just screaming that I had to get this message out there. And I went directly to the Chamber of Commerce first to talk about poverty and the need for school breakfast in the Kansas City, Kansas school district. Probably not going to get a lot of mileage. And so I jumped before I researched and I learned my terrain, which would make me appear like I was just coming across kind of ill-prepared, half-cocked, all of those things that you don't want to happen when you are running a community organizing campaign. You definitely want credibility, and you also don't want to spin your wheels so you're losing a lot of time. Okay? Next slide. Meet people where they are, not where we want them to be. This is where a lot of legwork happens. Okay, it's in our fantasy life. If I immediately say, you know what, I really want to work on school breakfast programs, I think that word of mouth should get everybody knocking on my door to come and talk to me. And if I say that I'm going to have a party and we're going to get it together and we're going to talk about school breakfast programs, of course everybody's going to want to show up. Doesn't work that way. You have to meet your community where they're at. That means that during certain issues and certain communities, you're going to go door to door. You're going to knock on those doors and you're going to feel awkward and you're going to think that no one's going to answer the door, but guess what? They do. And not everybody's going to be super friendly, but you'd be amazed on how many people want to join the conversation. You're going to go to meetings that your allies that you defined have already put in place. Okay? Don't try to reinvent the wheel. Go to things that are already collectively there. It saves you a lot of time. Those allies are already built in. Go to neighborhood events. If you're working on something that's particular to a certain area, there are lots and lots of community events that happen. You just really, really need to watch. It's amazing how much activity goes on Saturday and Sunday within the community that when we're not working on something, we don't pay attention to. But there is always some sort of meetup group, some sort of like church social, something like that. You want to make sure you get to those. Grocery stores. The entire community has to go buy food. And if you are in need of talking to a lot of people very quickly, go into a grocery store, standing out front. I would suggest talking to the manager first, but that's not always necessary. You know, we are a little bit rebellious. Go ahead and just start those conversations. And after the first one, they get much easier to start. And also school events. particularly in the example I'm using is school breakfast programs, school events that are already on the calendar and you're an advocate for this, you want to be there. Advance. So how do I talk about my message? I have the seed in my head, but how do I articulate it? First is back to our glossary terms. You are an expert in your own story. That is the one great thing about being a person is no one else is an expert on your story. Tell people why this issue or cause is important to you. Now, with that being said, particularly like with the school breakfast program, if you have a personal story of how you were directly affected by a lack of a school breakfast program or were benefited from a school breakfast program, absolutely use that. But part of your own story are the clients and or people surround you. If you have a personal story that didn't directly happen to you, you can still use that to talk about your neighbor's children, people you grew up with, all of those things. Those are all parts of your story and why our issues are important. You can draw from those folks around you. I'm not saying plagiarize, I'm not saying put your name on the story if it didn't happen to you, but you can absolutely say that this is important to me because my friend. Our knowledge of our own story is vital to moving the message. Particularly, well, all the time, but in the work that I do presently with labor, with union members, we always talk about member to member. And it is always better for us to get stories on causes and issues from membership to talk to members about. They're much more relatable than me coming up with some sort of canned story that just has talking points. Okay, so our knowledge of our own story is vital to moving our message. And that's true when you're working with a larger group. Know not only your own story, but get a sense of who has great stories that need to be shared publicly within your group of allies. More about how to talk. Okay, so we all have this fantasy that we are standing in front of a beautiful ballroom at the downtown Marriott, and that everybody is just hanging on our every word, and we are giving this amazing speech that people are going to cry, and that people are going to absolutely, they're going to want to record it, and they're going to want to play it for years to come. So always have that speech ready, fantasize about it, and think it through in your head. You probably are never going to use it. So whether to a group or an individual, when talking about an issue or a cause, always end with an ask. So I come to you and I'm telling you my story about school lunch programs and why it is important for our community to get around this, and I need you as an ally. I'm going to ask you for something. It's, may I have your email to keep up with you, keep you updated on the progress of the campaign? Can we have a party at your house and get other people involved? Can I borrow $5? You always have to have an ask. Always leave them with some action that you have to follow up with someone. If you start the conversation and they are engaged in your issue or cause, you definitely want to have an ask so you have a reason to follow up with them. Okay, next slide. Okay, so as opposed to your beautiful, wonderfully composed standing ovation speech, you're going to need to get your elevator speech ready. You're going to make 3 points, 27 words, 15 to 20 seconds. It's the average length of an elevator ride. Because sometimes that's all you're going to get, not only with people in the community, but when you do start to talk to public officials, you're not going to have a huge amount of time. So you try to keep it within the framework of your elevator speech. So here's an example. Hello, I'm a social worker. My organization is opposed to cutting school lunch programs. Do we have your support on this issue? Thanks for your time. I explained my expertise, stated my message, and I asked for their support. Okay. Next slide. Okay, so now I have my supporters behind me, and now the fun begins. Next slide. Who do we need to lobby? Okay, so when we're talking about issues and causes that we are community organizing around, our eventual goal is to move something in law, in statute, or in some way through a governing body. Okay, so it is important to pinpoint who we need to lobby. Okay, and this is sometimes where a lot of groups kind of flail a little bit, particularly when you have a bunch of people coming together and talking about it and no one has really done their research, and especially if they're angry. They're going to say, we need to get to the mayor, we need to get to the president, we need to get to the governor. And a lot of times, you're nowhere close to that. So decide who you need to lobby to move your cause or issue. Is it the city council or the mayor? Is it the school board? Is it the state legislature? Is it your neighborhood group or leadership? Now with school breakfast programs, your neighborhood group, unless you just want their endorsement, really can't do a lot for you. But there are times that your neighborhood group has some real influence over housing issues or street safety, things like that. So there's definitely somebody you want to keep on your list of potentially having to lobby. Do you need to lobby Congress? Do you need to lobby the governor or the president? But you definitely want to pinpoint who your target for lobbying is. Next slide. Research who you're lobbying. Know when their meetings are held. Know how to get on the agenda if wanting to address the full body. Know the process of how to get the issue voted on. And when does it get voted on? Be vigilant. From past experience, I know the first few years that moving and doing lobbying in different states, everybody is just a smidge different in their process of getting bills heard or getting a audience, so to speak, with like the county commission and things like that. I have learned the hard way by not giving myself enough time on the front end and dropping into town and heading to a meeting and not having enough of an idea of what their process is. Because again, everybody's process is different. The unified government in Wyandotte County, their process to have things heard in front of the county commission is different than Edwardsville City Council, or moving it through the Lawrence City Council is even different than Edwardsville. Or if you're going to want to talk with the legislature, that's even a different process and a different way that they move statutes and bills. So you want to be very clear and to make yourself kind of an expert of their process. Okay. Next slide. Be aware, time is fixed and finite. Time you cannot make more of. You can raise more money, you can find more people, you can build a bigger cause, you can do a whole bunch of things, but time is fixed and finite and you cannot make more. You have to be on top of the calendar. Timelines are very, very important in the process of moving a cause or issue, particularly through the community organizing and through the lobby process. Calendars change quickly, and just because you believe that a meeting is always going to be held on Thursday, don't put it past anybody to not flip the script and move it to Wednesday. Okay? Next slide. Okay, so when you are looking at folks to lobby, you do not want to reinvent the wheel. you will find when you sit down with folks that you have community organized and your allies, if you start to, and I'm going to throw this out there, this wasn't on the vocabulary list, if you start to power map, if you start to make a list of who you know and what groups you know of and who belongs to what, you have a pretty good circle of influence. They may not be like a first connection to you, but someone in your circle, in your community organizing, has some sort of connections. And you want to know those and make those available to move your cause. Who are my allies, my supporters, and myself? You do a community assessment or a power mapping on all those involved. What groups do they belong to? Who is the leadership in those groups? Do they go to a church? Are there multiple people that go to the same church? Is the church influential? Do they go to school? Do their kids all go to a particular elementary school? Does the city council, does the mayor, does a state legislator, does anybody within the neighborhood group, do they go to those schools? How are you connected? Are they part of a labor union? How many folks have connections to a labor union? Do you know anybody of influence? And that may be something as simple as when you were in 5th grade, your teacher was married to a city council person and you remember their name, and so you have an intro into that because you can say that I was in Miss Smith's 5th grade class. At the most minimal level, is an icebreaker. Okay, next slide. Okay, let's lobby. And I just throw this in there because I don't think probably anybody, next slide, advance here. Every time I talk about like getting excited about lobbying, and even times when I've gone into lobby, I'm always singing this in the back of my head. And I don't know if anybody's heard it. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby and get ourselves a treat. Okay, nobody, just me. It's older than movie theaters. Okay, next slide. Okay, so lobbying sometimes is a bad word. How we think of lobbyists? We think of usually the paid lobbyists who come out of corporations who have lots and lots of money and buy politicians or separate the actual community from folks in positions of power. Next slide. More on the lobbyist. Yeah, lobbyists don't have a great public image. Next slide. And that's the difference between paid versus citizen lobby. And I have been a paid lobbyist. However, it was not for corporations, it was for working people. But the term lobbyist, everyone always thinks that's attached to a big checkbook that you just write checks for things, and that is not true. There are some times in your work that you will absolutely want to contract a paid lobbyist or have someone who is responsible for lobbying solely on your staff. And so the benefits of actually having a paid lobbyist, their sole responsibility is to lobby your cause. Now, many of us, when we work in community action fields and advocacy groups, things like that, we wear many, 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 many hats, and lobbying is one of the many hats. And so there are times that we're totally focused on lobbying, and there are other times that we have to have our focus other places, just simply because of resources and time constraints, etc. So sometimes a paid lobbyist whose sole responsibility is to lobby your cause is essential. They also may have existing relationships with those that you want to lobby. And their sole job is to know the process. So there's no second guessing. There's no guessing about like how formal the process is to get a bill moved through the Senate. They know the ins and outs and the ups and downs. They also sometimes know where the bodies are buried, particularly when they have prior relationships. They know their history of folks, so they know. And it sounds really not a happy thing, but they know the pressure points sometimes to have the conversations to move particular causes. Next slide. So in the citizens lobby, however, is powerful. It's the power of public opinion. Their power in numbers. We've all seen pictures. We've seen news footage of social workers in front of the state capitol in Topeka, all wearing their same colored shirts and all doing the march around the building. And it looks amazing and it's powerful and it wakes people up so they want to hear what you're talking about. They also represent a voting bloc. For particularly if you are doing specific community organizing in particular places, if you are targeting your city council person or your state legislator, they are very influenced by folks who live in their districts. So if they know that this group that's all wearing their red shirts, that's all coming from this particular neighborhood to lobby this particular point, they know those folks are more than likely voters and they're going to vote in a block. So that is extraordinarily powerful for people who have to run for office. Citizens lobbies also have the advantage of using free media as opposed to everything being paid. It is not necessarily easy, but it is well within your abilities to be able to place stories with the local news. We all know, we can guess when they're slow news days, when they're going to need things. This is where you're going to plug right in there. And this goes back to being expert on your own story and those around you being experts in your story. It is amazing how much reporters love to see moms and dads with little kids talking about breakfast, right? So the Citizens Lobby has a major advantage on the fact that they can use the emotions of folks involved and use for media. Next slide. Okay, so lobbying is organizing in a different space. So to review what we went over, we know our turf, we know the folks that we're going to reach out to, we know our timelines because we know time is fixed and finite, we've defined our audience and our target for lobbying, and we prepared our elevator speech. So we are set to go and do some lobbying. One of the best techniques, particularly through community organizing, is what I affectionately call guerrilla lobbying. And when you are trying to reach a target, especially when your timeline is shrinking, no place is sacred. I have followed women into the bathroom to have the conversation when a vote was coming up. If you position yourself in the right place, you will run into everyone, depending on the place that you're trying to lobby. In the city council, know what door they come out of. You're going to have to run them down. And it sounds like it's annoying, and it sounds like, oh my gosh, we're stalking. Absolutely not. It's all fair when you're talking about moving your cause. And particularly when you're on a deadline, and particularly if you're going to be doing anything in lobbying in the legislature, because those timelines are strict and they're quick, and there's a whole lot of hustle at the end, because if your bills don't get heard and they don't get flipped around to the next house, your cause is dead for that session. So you move quickly, and you are not hindered by this whole idea of like, oh, I can't go up and I can't just break into conversation. You absolutely can when you're down to the wire. Okay, next slide. Face-to-face contact is always the best use and vehicle for your message, but there are many vehicles for your message that you should couple with your face-to-face contact. Old school snail mail, people still read it. Be effective in your use. I wouldn't send out a long letter every week, but mail, if done correctly, is effective. Email, again, as long as you are not barraging people with email, because we all know we get a lot of things that look like spam, but if you're sending personal emails, absolutely. Great way to use your message. Have your other folks that you have community organized to send the email. Email with a twist. Attach a video, an audio bite. Make your message sparkle. Make it something that they absolutely want to see and hear. Send it to their official email. People are less likely to read it if you send it to their personal email, but if you send it to their official or their work email, they're more likely to read it. Okay. Next slide.
Go.
Okay, so we are up to using social media. We use it for everything. We use it to communicate with our friends. We use it to set appointments. We use it for just about everything. We use it most of the time for our own news. But use it. Use it when you are community organizing and when you are lobbying. Everyone usually has Facebook. It's a very good way to get folks together and to have a quick conversation. Most electives have Facebook. They have official Facebook. The cooler ones have Twitter. As the politicos are getting, as more millennials and folks are getting into the political arena, absolutely Twitter is a big one to use, and sound bites are great, and pictures. Instagram, everybody loves Instagram. They're not using it as much for as much as they should be, but they are growing and using it. And even some folks are using Snapchat now to do organizing, community organizing particularly, and some messaging to folks who are lobbying, but really drawing folks together, particularly when you are organizing students, again, or millennials. Snapchat is big. The powers that be are never going to be as up to the moment on social media as everybody else. Now, they might be on their personal side, but particularly folks who hold office are always going to be concerned about, or they should be concerned, and we've known a few that didn't quite know how to use social media, and it came and bit them. But for the most part, they'll be a couple of steps behind on their official social media. Next slide. Tips for organizing and lobbying. The target of your organizing or lobbying is not an expert on everything, even though they will pretend that they are. Particularly politicians will pretend that they know exactly what you are talking about and they know everything about it. They don't. They are only experts in their own story and possibly in their own field that brought them to the political arena. So you are the expert in the room about your particular issue. It is okay not to have every answer about your issue or cause, but you do need to say, I will find that for you and I will follow up. So particularly with politicos, if you are lobbying a government official, don't leave them hanging, because when you do, the counter to your message, the opponent, is right behind you outside the door with their message. Okay, next slide. More helpful hints. You do not always have to do everything yourself. It is important that you delegate. When you are looking at timelines, etc., and calendars, it is really easy to jump in with both feet and think that you are going to take on and conquer the world and you're going to keep all the balls in the air. It will make you crazy and probably make you collapse in exhaustion. Delegate. Everybody within your community organizing circle should have a role and a job to push your cause forward and to continue in your lobbying efforts. Also understand, when you are going out and you are researching and getting those folks who are supportive of you, that not everyone that you talk to that supports you is going to be an activist. It is okay. It is frustrating, but it is okay. The old saying is, if you want something done, ask a busy person. Yes, absolutely. In your community organizing efforts, moving through your lobby efforts, the same 10 people are going to do the bulk of the work. It just is how it is. But you all need to be doing self-care with each other, and those 10 people delegate the work so no one's stuck holding the bag on everything. Okay, next slide. And it's all in the numbers. Stay organized, keep lists, keep numbers of all your work, keep your notes, keep everything. You don't want to ever come out at the end of your lobbying session or even when you're community organizing and not know specifically who you talk to and what you talk to them about. Be diligent in your staying organized. Okay, next slide. When you are initially doing the community organizing, when you are talking to your allies, when you are moving on through lobbying, when you are talking to public officials or whoever your source of power is for a particular issue, there is nothing to fear. No is not a scary thing. I have said some really crazy things to particularly legislators in my lifetime for the cause, and never once have any of them punched me. The worst thing they've ever done is said no. So, and that isn't scary, it's just hard to hear. Okay, next slide. Okay, I'm done with my part of the presentation with the PowerPoint. I am open to answering any questions that anybody has about community organizing, lobbying, union organizing.
Yeah, that was really great.
So Renee, they seem to like it.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Questions?
I guess I do have a question. Hello. When you were talking about, where was it? Know your allies and who to talk to, whether it be someone on city council or school board. If you know someone in that area, and they're on like a certain district, does it matter which person represents which district you talk to as long as you get your message out, or do you want to talk to, am I making sense?
Yes, absolutely. So if you have a personal connection, like we talked about a little bit, the circle of influence, if you have a personal connection with anybody on a particular board, any of the sources of power, absolutely, have the conversation with that person, take your cause to that person, even if you need it to be moved to someone in a different district, that person is going to be able to help you have that next conversation.
Great.
Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Don't be shy. It's a great time to get a clarification on slides or concepts.
I just have one, it might be kind of silly, but the part where you say natural and not so natural allies, could you kind of expand on that?
Did you hear that, Renee?
No, I'm sorry, you didn't hear the question.
She wants to, will you please expand on natural and not so natural allies?
Okay, great. So depending upon the cause or the issue or the particular work that you're doing, there's going to be folks who do similar work. They do stuff that falls right in line with your path that you're doing, that the road you're automatically going to go down, right? So that's your first kind of ring of allies. Then you have folks who may not work in the field, may just have the ideology that supports your cause. May have not have when we're talking about school breakfast programs, may not have a kid in the school district, but just thinks that kids should not be hungry. So those would also be your natural allies. When you're looking at that, you look at other folks who are directly or indirectly related to your cause. For breakfast and for those kind of programs, a lot of those come through the Department of Agriculture. And the influence would be like the farmers in the Farm Bureau because they're getting subsidized. You have to kind of think outside the box on who would not, would not necessarily be someone that would be your go-to. They may not agree with you on any other cause that you're going to work on, but this one in particular, they're all about it. From past experience, I know that working with, lobbying with, alongside folks who were lobbying for families with children with developmental disabilities, that we had a list of folks who were in the Missouri legislature that were very, very conservative, wanted to kill any bill that spent any money on kids anywhere at all. However, we found a unnatural ally because a particular, one particular House member had grandkids who were in programs for children with developmental disabilities. So that was a pet project for that particular representative, even though they would kill any other program that had to deal with poverty in children. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I mean, I've heard the logic doesn't make sense, but does that make sense about unnatural allies?
Yeah.
Or you have to think outside the box. What are the other things that influence the person?
Yeah.
And the one that I was sharing with you, Renee, about Pride, and I shared with the class, is it's a group of gay activists. I believe it's in Wales, but they end up joining with the union members against Margaret Thatcher.
Oh, yeah.
Because they had a common cause, even though originally the union members did not think they would support the group that was gay. They realized that they had a common dislike of Margaret Thatcher.
Right.
So that's why I suggested that film for you. I think we have another question.
Excellent example. Another one that came to mind is, it was shocking to me when I went to work in Arizona, because I was born and raised in Kansas. I had never worked in the desert before. But I knew a little bit about the green movement and the environmentalists that tended to be, for lack of a better term, at the time particularly like granola crunchy, a little bit, everybody wanted to call them hippies and all sorts of stuff. Their biggest allies on environmental issues were the libertarian ranchers, old school people in northern Arizona that would not vote with them on any other issue ever, but the water rights in the desert are huge. It's a huge issue, and it's an environmental issue. So they were right there alongside all of the environmentalists, all of the green kids fighting to protect water rights.
Renee, I think we have another question.
Sure.
Yeah, hi. My question was about, you had mentioned about the power of public opinion and the ability to use like the free media to get your cause out there. Can you kind of just give me a little bit more background on that?
Okay, so when a lot of times that particularly companies, etc., they have the advantage of paying for all of the mailers and paying for advertising time, etc. What you have at your disposal as a community organizer, as a citizens group, citizens lobby, is that you can use the current media. You can develop a rapport with the reporters in the area who particularly like to do either political stories or human interest stories or something like that. Anytime that you're doing any kind of action or activity, it is a very good idea to just draft a short little press release. And it doesn't have to be fancy, it doesn't have to go along the guidelines of what a press release should look like, but just send it out to your local reporters. Send it out to just to the general, just the news desk, I think is usually what they call them in all the newsrooms that don't have a particular reporter assignment, because they're always looking for something to fill time, right? You know, all the stations have multiple newscasts, and they need to fill 25 minutes 3 or 4 times a day. They're going to need things to fill. The pitch newspaper is a really good one also, to just look through and find out who has the bylines. Call them up, introduce yourself, take them to lunch. Having a good relationship with reporters is always in your best interest.
And then you had mentioned going through your organization and finding like someone with a backstory or something that might stand out.
Yes.
Thank you.
So, okay, so when you are looking at what your cause is going to do, and if you're working with an organization that you already kind of have a defined mission, those folks who are either clients of the organization or members of the community group or whatever else, however they're connected with you and your organization. And if it's a cause that you are working on, have a history of working on, or it's something brand new, most people have some sort of experience with that cause. And so being a good community organizer, one of the first things we do when we start to look for our allies and our supporters in our own circles is, and this is a really hard thing for me to do, we do a 70-30 split, is what we call it, is where you are listening 70% of the time and you're talking 30% of the time. In that 70%, you should be listening to every nuance and everything that the person in front of you is saying, right? To be able to pick out what their cause and issues are, so then you know where to plug them in your work as a community organizer to help them develop their story, to be able to have it media ready, or be able to have them go and talk to the power sources, whether it's in front of the legislature, et cetera, for them to be able to expand on their story and be the expert on their own story. But it really is about listening. It's about having the framework of what your cause or your issue is, and then trying to draw out those personal stories about that and having those ready, having those folks ready to be able to talk about it.
Thank you.
So, any burning last questions before I say goodbye to Renee and thank her? Any? Renee, thank you so much. As always, this was wonderful. I really do appreciate it.
Not a problem. I enjoy it.
We'll talk soon.
All right. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.